The massive Galactic Council station floated in the dark space, lit up by distant stars and nearby planets. Ships from countless worlds docked at its many ports, carrying important leaders from hundreds of different species. Inside, the main hall stretched out like a giant cathedral, with rows and rows of seats for delegates from every corner of known space. Ambassador Lisa Goldman walked through the giant doors with her team. She was a tall woman with brown hair tied back in a neat bun, wearing the simple gray uniform of the Earth Federation. The badge on her chest showed a blue planet with stars around it. Behind her walked 3 other humans, each carrying themselves with quiet confidence that spoke of years of training. Richard Murphy, her security chief, scanned the room with careful eyes. His hand stayed close to the energy shield generator on his belt, a habit formed from years protecting Earth's ambassadors. Tyler Brooks, the tall man with glasses, clutched a data pad filled with research about every species in the room. Then there was Michelle Adams, youngest of the group, who spoke a dozen alien languages fluently. The hall itself was beautiful, made of clear crystal walls that seemed to dance with light. Real-time translators worked overtime, changing every word spoken into 834 different languages at once. Humans had only learned about these translators 6 months ago, when they first made contact with the rest of the galaxy. "Remember our position," Lisa whispered to her team as they found their seats in the newcomer section. The newer species always sat in the back, far from the decision-makers up front. She noticed how other new civilizations looked nervous, some having joined the Council decades ago, but still treated like children. Above them, floating in the center of the room, appeared a 3-dimensional display showing the meeting agenda. Lisa read the fancy words that meant one simple thing: the old races would decide how much resources the new species could have. This had been going on the same way for thousands of years. High Coordinator Vexthar, a tall figure with scales that changed colors, stood at the main podium. His people, the Krell, had been council leaders since before Earth had invented the wheel. He pressed a control, and his deep voice filled the room through the translators. "Welcome to this gathering. Today we discuss resource allocation for emerging civilizations." Lisa noticed how he said emerging like it meant something less important. She had spent weeks studying council history, learning how things worked. The pattern was clear. Old species controlled trade routes, mining rights, and technology sharing. New species got whatever crumbs fell from the table. As different delegates began speaking in their strange languages, Lisa prepared herself. Her team had spent months preparing for this moment. They had learned every rule, every tradition, every small detail about how the council operated. More importantly, they had discovered things the old species thought were secret. Richard passed her a small note: 3 security drones watching us more than others. Tyler's eyes met hers briefly. Financial records show pattern. Michelle nodded slightly. Language stress indicators ready. Lisa smiled calmly but felt her heart racing. Today would be different. Today, Earth would not simply ask for fairness. Today, Earth would demand it, and they had the tools to make their demands matter. The other new species in their section shifted uncomfortably, probably wondering why the human delegation looked so confident. The opening ceremonies continued, with speeches about unity and progress, words that sounded beautiful but meant little when profit and power controlled every decision. Lisa studied the faces of the older delegates, noting how they looked at human representatives with casual dismissal. That mistake would cost them dearly. As the formal presentations began, she gripped her datapad tighter. Inside it lay evidence that could shake the council to its foundations. But timing was everything in diplomacy. She would wait, listen, and then strike when the moment was perfect. The stage was set, and history was about to change. The council room remained busy as species after species presented their requests. Each one followed the same pattern. They asked for small things, accepted even smaller offers, and thanked the council leaders warmly. Lisa Goldman watched this old dance with growing anger. Her people deserved better than this system designed to keep them small. The human delegation will now present their proposal, Vexthar announced, his scales turning a pale yellow that meant boredom in Krell culture. Around him, representatives of the oldest species barely looked up from their displays. They expected another weak request for mining rights on some far-off asteroid. Lisa stood up smoothly, her team following her lead. As she walked to the central podium, she caught the eyes of the newer species. They watched with a mix of hope and fear, wondering if humans would embarrass themselves by asking for too much. Honored members of the Galactic Council, Lisa began, her voice steady and clear. Earth brings today a proposal that benefits not just humanity, but every species that seeks true partnership in this galaxy. This got attention. Several older delegates looked up from their private communications, a proposal that helped everyone. That was not how things worked in the council. We request 3 simple changes, Lisa continued. First, equal voting rights for all species regardless of how long they've been members. Second, fair access to established trade routes for newcomers. Third, transparency in how council resources are divided. The room erupted in whispers. Translation devices worked overtime to carry reactions across species barriers. The word outrage appeared in 834 different forms. Diplomat Zarthok of the hegemony stood up quickly, his 4 arms waving in anger. His species had controlled 3 major trade routes for centuries. Impossible. New species lack the experience to make important decisions. They need our guidance. Guidance, Lisa repeated slowly, or control. She tapped her data pad, and numbers appeared on every display in the room. These figures show that the top 10 species control 94% of all trade routes. The bottom 50 species share just 2%. Tyler Brooks had spent countless nights gathering this data. Now it floated in the air for everyone to see. The older delegates shifted uncomfortably. They thought these numbers were secrets, buried in complex language and hidden reports. Furthermore, Lisa continued, her confidence growing. Earth proposes that all trade route access be determined by fair competition, not by historical claims. Let species prove their worth through efficiency and innovation, not through age alone. High Coordinator Vexthar attempted to regain control. The Council has traditions that date back thousands of years. We cannot simply. Traditions that no longer serve the galaxy's growth, Richard Murphy interrupted, drawing shocked looks for his boldness. With respect, we calculated that current policies slow galactic advancement by at least 23% annually. Michelle Adams stepped forward, her database of cultural knowledge guiding her words. Every species here started small once. Did the Krell not ask for fair treatment when they were newcomers 12,000 years ago? Her words struck deep. Krell history books spoke proudly of their rise, often mentioning their fight against unfair systems, but that was ancient history to them now. We demand a vote on these proposals, Lisa stated firmly. Today. Not next cycle, not after further studies. The new species have waited long enough for equality. The newer delegates in the back sections started murmuring among themselves. Lissa could see calculations happening in their minds. If humans could push this hard, maybe they could too. Maybe the old ways could change. Vexthar's scales turned dark red with anger. You dare demand from the council. We dare to ask for fairness, Lisa replied. If that frightens the council, perhaps the problem lies not with our request, but with the system itself. Silence fell across the grand hall, broken only by the soft hum of translation devices. Lisa had just done what no newcomer had dared in centuries. She had challenged the entire foundation of galactic politics. The silence in the council hall grew heavy as everyone waited. Lisa Goldman's team had prepared for this moment, knowing the old species would try to reject their proposal quickly. They had expected anger, denial, maybe even threats. But Tyler Brooks had discovered something during his late-night research that would change everything. Before the council votes on our proposal, Lisa said carefully, perhaps we should address certain irregularities in the current system. She glanced at Tyler, who pressed a button on his datapad. The hall's displays suddenly filled with new information. Trade route maps appeared, showing strange patterns of ship disappearances. Financial records revealed hidden fees and unexplained delays. Communications between Council enforcers detailed sabotage operations against newer species technology. These documents were obtained legally through public trade partner agreements, Lisa stated quickly, preventing accusations of theft. They show a pattern of deliberate actions taken to keep new species dependent. Representative Cree of the Delaney people leaned forward, his glowing skin pulsing rapidly, a sign of excitement and fear. His species had lost 3 major shipments last year to what the Council called unfortunate accidents. Look at Section C-17, Richard Murphy pointed out, his security training helping him identify the key evidence. Council enforcers installed defective parts in Morpharian ships, then refused to process their complaints. Those ships carried medical supplies. The Morpharian delegates stood up immediately, gesturing wildly with their tentacles. We lost hundreds of lives when treatment was delayed. More displays filled the air, each one showing another example of corruption. Mining rights sold at secret auctions. Technology blueprints deliberately modified to fail. Trade inspections that happened only when new species ships carried valuable cargo. Vexthar's scales shifted through angry colors. Red, then purple, then black. These are mere administrative errors. The galaxy is vast. Mistakes happen. Hundreds of mistakes, all following the same pattern. Tyler Brooks challenged, adjusting his glasses as he highlighted another document. This report from 3 cycles ago predicted which new species would suffer accidents based on how much profit the older species could gain. The newer delegates murmured louder now. Some pulled out their own records, checking against the evidence Lisa's team had presented. Confirmation after confirmation lit up their displays. The pattern was undeniable. "We demand an investigation," declared Zarthuk, trying to appear fair while the evidence mounted against his species. "These accusations are serious." "Indeed they are," Lisa agreed, "which is why we've already filed formal charges with the Galactic Justice Bureau. They're reviewing the evidence as we speak." This was the trap. While the Council had debated Earth's proposal, seeing it as just another ambitious request, Lisa's team had already begun legal proceedings. The Council rules required immediate action when justice charges were filed. "The Bureau will need full access to Council records," Michelle Adams explained, her knowledge of galactic law proving essential. "All financial transactions, all Council decisions, all private communications between representatives." Panic spread among the older delegates. Private communications meant exposure of countless deals made in secret. Some species had built their wealth entirely on these arrangements. If everything became public, their populations would demand answers. "This is blackmail," a hegemony deputy shouted, his voice carrying through the translators. "This is transparency," Lisa corrected. "The same transparency your Council's charter promises, but never delivers." High Coordinator Vexthar attempted to restore order by raising his many arms. "The Council will adjourn to discuss these developments." "No," Lisa said firmly. The single word echoed across the hall like thunder. "We vote on our proposal now, or Earth formally withdraws its application for Council membership." The threat hung in the air. Withdrawal was a power every species held but rarely used. Once out, getting back in required unanimous agreement, something virtually impossible with current tensions. "A dramatic gesture won't help your cause," Vexthar warned. "It's not just Earth's gesture," Lisa replied, looking at the newer species. "It's a choice each of you must make right now." The Council hall transformed from quiet to chaos in moments. Representatives grabbed their communication devices, speaking rapidly in dozens of languages. The newer species watched the older ones with growing suspicion, while allies whispered warnings to each other. Lissa Goldman kept her face calm, but inside she felt her heart racing. "The Earth delegation will wait while we consult Council procedures," Vexthar declared, his scales now completely black with anger. The color meant danger in Krell body language, and Lisa's team tensed instinctively. "The procedures are clear," Michelle Adams responded quickly, her voice steady. "Charter Article 47, Section 8. Any member species may vote on proposals before the Council without delay." Her perfect knowledge of galactic law made the older delegates grumble. They relied on newer species not understanding the rules, allowing them to delay votes indefinitely. But humanity had studied everything. Tyler Brooks added, "The Charter also states that withdrawal becomes effective immediately upon declaration. No waiting period required." This was the moment of truth. The Council had never faced such direct pressure. For thousands of years, they had controlled new species through complexity and delay. Now humans were using their own laws against them. Representative Cree stood up slowly, his bioluminescent skin flickering green, the color of careful decision-making. The Delaney people wished to speak. His voice carried across the hall, drawing every eye to him. "For 17 cycles, we have followed Council guidance. We paid special fees, accepted limited trade routes, watched our ships disappear." Other newer species leaned forward. This was unprecedented. Delaney were known for their caution, never challenging authority. "Today we learned these losses were not accidents," Cree continued. "We demand immediate investigation and compensation." He turned to face Lisa. "If humanity withdraws, the Delaney will join them." The hall erupted. More delegates stood, some shouting in alien languages. The translators struggled to keep up with the sudden flood of emotions. "The Morpharians second this position," announced their delegate, her tentacles waving in agreement. "We lost population to delayed medicines. This cannot continue." One by one, representatives of newer species began standing. The Vortex Collective, the Gleaming Stars Republic, the United Spheres, each declared their support for Earth's proposal or threatened withdrawal. Richard Murphy observed carefully, noting which older species started sweating or shifting nervously. His security background helped him read guilt even across species barriers. 17 new members now standing, he murmured to Lisa. 6 more needed for majority. Zarthok tried to regain control. "This rebellion will destroy everything. The Council maintains order, prevents chaos. Order built on theft and lies," challenged a Brillian delegate, her crystal shell tinkling with emotion. "Better honest chaos than false peace." Vexthar raised his arms high, trying to project authority. "The Council will grant a compromise. We will review some practices, create committees to study, committees to delay more years." Lisa interrupted. "While species suffer? No, we vote now on equal rights and fair access, or we leave now. Nothing in between." The ultimatum hung in the air like an electric field. Lisa knew they had reached the breaking point. Either the Council would surrender its power or risk losing its entire authority structure. Without enough members, galactic trade would collapse, star jump routes would become unsafe, and the old species would lose their massive profits. High Coordinator Vexthar's scales shifted again, to a gray that meant resignation. "The Council requires time to understand these accusations fully." 1 hour, Lisa declared. That should be enough time to decide between justice and greed. The clock was ticking, and the entire galaxy held its breath, waiting to see if thousands of years of tradition would finally break. The Council Hall split into small groups as the countdown began. Lissa Goldman led her team to a neutral area where representatives of the Rebel Alliance, as some had started calling it, could meet openly. 23 species now stood with Earth, a number that grew with each passing minute. "We need to prepare for withdrawal," Tyler Brooks advised quietly, checking his calculations again. "If they reject our demands, we must have a solid plan." Richard Murphy nodded. "I've already communicated with our fleet. Earth ships are ready to establish independent trade routes with our new allies." Around them, delegates gathered, sharing concerns and ideas. The Brillans offered advanced crystal technology. The Morpharians shared their expertise in biological sciences. Species that had been kept small by the Council suddenly realized they had valuable skills to trade with each other. "Your plan cannot work," shouted an old hegemony advisor, approaching their group. "Without Council infrastructure, you'll lose interstellar navigation, medical databases, emergency rescue services." Michelle Adams smiled calmly. "Earth scientists have already developed workarounds. We spent 6 months preparing alternatives to every Council service." The admission stunned the advisor. Most species spent years just learning to use Council systems. Humans had learned them and created backups in months. "We know how to share data peer-to-peer," Tyler explained. "Navigation can work without central servers. Emergency services can operate on distributed networks. The tech isn't that complex when you remove the control elements." Representative Cree approached with good news. "The Delaney government has authorized full support. Our crystal networks can replace Council communication systems." More species joined, each bringing unique capabilities. The Vortex Collective had the best shield technology. The United Spheres had developed quantum computers that worked differently from Council standards. Meanwhile, in the center of the hall, the older delegates argued furiously. Vexthar's staff tried to calculate the financial impact of losing so many members. Numbers didn't lie. Without the newer species' resources and labor, the old system would crash within months. 30 minutes remaining," announced a neutral timekeeper. Lisa watched the older delegates' desperation grow. Some started private discussions with wavering species, offering bribes and threats. Others checked their personal wealth accounts, realizing their fortunes depended on the status quo. A Krell Jr. delegate approached Lisa carefully. "Ambassador Goldman, my people face economic collapse without Council trade. But the evidence you showed, we cannot ignore it anymore. Join us." Lisa offered simply. "Build something fair, where merit matters more than age." The younger delegate hesitated. The Krell had led the Council for millennia. Giving up power would shake their entire society. But watching other species embrace change might offer an alternative to endless guilt and eventual failure. 15 minutes, the timekeeper called. Tension filled the air like static electricity. Species that had been allies for centuries found themselves on opposite sides. Friendships strained under the weight of history and profit. The clock ticked down while the future of galactic civilization hung in balance. Vexthar tried one last diplomatic move. "We accept some reforms. Newer species will get 5% more voting power immediately. Equal rights," Lisa repeated firmly. "Not scraps from the table." The hour ended with a chime that echoed through the hall. Every delegate returned to their positions. The moment of truth had arrived. Lisa stood straight, her team behind her, representing not just Earth, but a vision of what the galaxy could become. High Coordinator Vexthar rose from his position, his scales shifting through uncertain colors as he prepared to announce the Council's decision that would reshape galactic history forever. All eyes turned to High Coordinator Vexthar as he stood at the center podium. His massive form cast long shadows across the hall, making him appear even larger than usual. But Lisa Goldman noticed something the others might miss. Tiny tremors in his hands, a sign of stress that even advanced Krell could not fully control. "The Galactic Council has reached its decision," Vexthar announced, his voice carrying authority that seemed to fill every corner of the giant chamber. The translators buzzed softly as his words converted to hundreds of languages. Lisa felt her team tense beside her. Richard Murphy placed a protective hand near his weapon, just in case. Michelle Adams clutched her data pad, ready to coordinate the withdrawal if needed. Tyler Brooks kept his eyes on their allies, watching for any signs of betrayal. After careful consideration of all proposals and evidence presented, Vexthar continued, his scales shifting from black to a lighter shade of gray. "The Council acknowledges that certain administrative practices require review." Murmurs swept through the room. That wasn't a clear answer either way. Lisa knew this trick. The Council often used vague language to delay real decisions. However, Vexthar raised his voice, silencing the whispers. The evidence of corruption cannot be ignored. His scales turned orange, the color of difficult truth in Krell culture. The council admits that some members have abused their positions for personal gain. Now the hall erupted in chaos. Older delegates turned on each other, pointing fingers and making accusations. Some tried to leave quietly through side doors, afraid of what might come next. Silence, Vexthar commanded, his massive frame straightening to its full height. The investigation will begin immediately. All council records will be opened for review. But first, he paused, looking directly at Lisa. We must address the original proposal. Lisa forced herself to remain calm. This was the critical moment. Everything they had fought for came down to the next words. The council votes to accept Earth's proposal in full, Vexthar declared. The words hung in the air like a miracle. Equal voting rights for all members, fair access to trade routes, complete transparency in resource allocation. Celebrations began among the newer species. Whoops, holographic displays of joy, and translated cheers filled the air. But Lisa remained focused. Something felt wrong. Additionally, Vexthar continued, raising his hand for quiet. Earth's Ambassador Goldman is hereby appointed to lead the new Transparency Committee. Her team will have full access to investigate all council practices. The older delegates sat in stunned silence. Some looked defeated, accepting their fate. Others watched Lisa with calculating eyes, already planning how to maintain power within the new system. Richard Murphy leaned close to Lisa. It's a trap. They're putting us in charge so they can blame us when systems fail during the transition. Tyler Brooks nodded in agreement. They expect us to fix everything overnight or fail trying. Michelle Adams, however, smiled slightly. Let them try. We have the evidence, the allies, and the skills. They've given us exactly what we need to reshape everything. Lisa stood tall, addressing the council. Earth accepts this responsibility. We will bring fairness to every species, old and new alike. As delegates began filing out, planning for the massive changes ahead, Lisa felt the weight of history shifting. The galaxy would never be the same, but for the first time in millennia, every species had hope that their children might see true equality among the stars. The council hall slowly emptied, leaving behind the historic moment when a newcomer species had peacefully revolutionized galactic civilization through courage, preparation, and unwavering determination. 3 weeks had passed since the historic council vote. Lisa Goldman stood at the observation deck of the Galactic Council Station, watching ships arrive from across the galaxy. Everything looked the same massive structure, the same busy docking ports, but everything had changed. The first independent trade agreement has been signed. Tyler Brooks reported, walking up beside her. His usual nervous energy had settled into quiet confidence. The Delani and Morpharians will exchange crystal technology for medical advances. Lisa smiled, watching a human exploration vessel fly past. Without council permission or fees. Completely independent, Tyler confirmed. The new trade protocols Earth designed work perfectly. No central authority needed. Richard Murphy joined them, bringing news from the investigation committee he now co-led. We've uncovered more evidence this week than I expected in months. Some council members are actually helping us expose the truth. Fear works sometimes, Michelle Adams added, arriving with translation tablets. When species see their leaders facing justice, they cooperate to avoid worse punishment. The committee had been busy. Every day brought new revelations about the old system's corruption. Council members who had stolen entire planets' worth of resources now faced trials. Trade routes artificially restricted for profit were opening to all species. Lisa received daily reports of progress across the galaxy. The Brilliant species had established a new communication network, replacing council-controlled channels. The Vortex Collective created open-source navigation systems that any ship could use freely. Even former enemy species began talking about peace, freed from council-imposed rivalries. Ambassador Goldman called a familiar voice. They turned to see Representative Kree approaching, his bioluminescent skin showing the bright blue of happiness. The Delaney Council asks me to extend formal thanks. Our economy has grown 17% since gaining fair trade access. You did the work, Lisa responded warmly. Earth just helped remove the barriers. Similar success stories arrived daily. Species that had stagnated for decades now innovated rapidly. Scientific papers and technology exchanges flew between worlds without council restrictions. The galaxies seemed to breathe more freely. But challenges remained. Some older species struggled with reduced power. A few extremist groups threatened violence to preserve the old ways. Criminal organizations, once protected by corrupt council members, now operated dangerously in legal gray areas. We have work ahead, Lisa acknowledged to her team. But look what we've achieved in less than a month. Through the observation window, she watched a Krell warship dock alongside a human science vessel. Once enemies by council design, they now collaborated on quantum propulsion research. In the station's cafeteria below, dozens of species mingled freely, sharing meals and ideas without formal diplomatic protocols. Tyler checked his datapad. The younger Krell ambassador requested another meeting. Their people want Earth's educational system to help reform their schools. Vexthar's grandson? Michelle asked, amused. The old coordinator had retired in disgrace, but his family now embraced reform to restore their honor. The same, Tyler confirmed. Change comes even to the oldest species. As the team prepared for their next meeting, Lisa took one final look at the stars. Humanity had walked out of the council's chamber as newcomers barely worth notice. They returned as leaders of peaceful revolution, proving that courage matters more than tradition. The galaxy stretched before them, full of possibilities that had been hidden for millennia behind walls of greed and power. Now every species could reach for those distant stars with equal opportunity. Lisa turned to join her team, knowing their work had just begun, but their greatest victory was already won.